here are 5 things that I learned from families. No, that's impossible to list because I'm sure the experiences have been incredible over the
Oh,
years.
yeah. Yeah.
But how has that transformed your life as a nurse, as a bereavement director, and also as a person? What are
Yeah.
the teachings that have come through all that work and all those babies that sadly left too soon?
Forgive me if I get emotional.
No, it's okay.
Um, yeah, there's so many things I've learned about humanity and about love and about grief and about transformation and about healing. Um, and right there, it's multifaceted. So like the professional Jill, the personal Jill, the mom Jill, and all of these have been impacted greatly by my patients and families, right? I always tell them they're my greatest teachers. They teach me more than I can learn in a book or in a program, but I've also been transformed through my education too. Um, so maybe I'll start with that transformation through my thanatology program, because I went into that and people were like, why aren't you getting a master's in nursing? It's way more valuable. And right, it
Mhm.
just wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to enhance the work that I was already doing.
Welcome to the Wise Doula podcast, a place for informative, uplifting, and educational conversations. Here, we will discuss all things connected with parenting, from conception to birth, postpartum, and beyond. You are amongst friends here, so go ahead and grab a cup of your favorite drink. Remember, not caffeinated if you are expecting, and join me inside. I can't wait to speak with you. My guest today is Jill Kottmeier, registered nurse and thanatologist. I invited Jill to the podcast today because her field of study, her field of work is perinatal loss. For more than 2 decades, Jill has been supporting families at her hospital and accompanying them through the difficult process of having to say goodbye to their baby too soon. Her mission is to make sure that no family is alone or unsupported or misunderstood. And she does that through promoting the different programs her hospital has for bereaved families. This is a support that starts at the beginning when they get the news that their baby is not alive, but continues well after families have left the hospital. Jill not only studied and trained as a nurse, but eventually went on to get her master's in thanatology, studying the death, dying, and bereavement. It is an honor to have her on the podcast today, and I am really excited to hear all the insights that she's going to bring to us and all the learning experiences and all the wisdom she has accumulated from working with hundreds of babies that left us too soon. Her work honors bereaved families and honors other professionals as well. In her role, she gets to support other nurses that are working with bereaved families too, and to guide them and mentor them. This is so important. And it is my hope that with today's interview, we give you a deeper insight into the world of perinatal loss. Whether it touches you or it touches somebody close to you, family or friend, my hope is that after today's episode, you will live with some effective tools and some better idea on how to care, nurture, and support your family and friends going through this experience. Okay, so Jill, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm really excited to be here and happy to connect with you again and talk through some interesting things today.
Absolutely. I am very excited too. It's going to be an awesome conversation. And we decided we're gonna be talking about perinatal bereavement today, which is a very difficult topic, but at
Hmm.
the same time, it's a very beautiful topic that I think we really need to bring to everybody and really invite everybody to learn more about it, because there is a bit of fear around it
Hmm.
and a lot of fear around it. And to begin with, I think it would be awesome, before we get into the nitty gritty of things,
Yeah.
I think it would be awesome if you um, tell us a bit about yourself, but perhaps instead of a regular bio, which we already had at the beginning of the episode, something fun about yourself, something interesting, a little bit of who you are, and then we can get into more of the aspects related to your work with perinatal loss.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a hard thing to say without saying I'm a nurse because that's so much of my identity, whether that's good or bad, but I've been a nurse for 27 years.
Mhm.
But outside of being a nurse, I am a mom of two amazing young adult children, and one who is in the military and one who is an artist. And one thing that I think encompasses me and my kids, oh, also I'm a single mom, is that we love to travel and we love the outdoors and we love nature. I think nature has been a healing space for me my whole life. And whenever I am not feeling great, I know that that's my biggest answer is to go out in nature. And I hope that I've created that love of travel and nature within my kids. And my latest adventurous nature experience was swimming with sharks in the Bahamas.
Ooh, that sounds very interesting. How was that?
It was amazing. The seas were a little bit rough that day, which wasn't ideal. But we got to jump into the middle of the ocean and swim with these beautiful creatures that are often demonized, but shouldn't be.
Hmm. Was it a little bit scary, or you felt safe because of the how the whole activity was organized and all that?
I felt safe with the activities and how it was organized, but right,
Mm,
you're in the ocean, you're in the wild, you're in their home. So there's
mm,
always that unpredictability. Um, but
yeah.
also very exhilarating, a little adrenaline push of jumping in the ocean with sharks.
Oh, that's
They were
awesome. Oh.
just some reef sharks, so pretty harmless,
Ah, okay, okay, okay. Got
but
you,
not,
got you.
you could get bit by a shark, right? We
Yeah,
all can.
absolutely. Absolutely. I we did that with stingrays years ago in the
Yeah,
Bahamas,
so
and
beautiful.
it was so it's a little it's different, you're like, oh
Hmm.
my goodness, I don't know what
Yeah,
to think, and everybody's like, it's okay, it's okay. But no, that's really awesome. I love that you mentioned the love of nature, because I think it's something that is so good for our mental health. And a lot of
yes,
times we when it comes to self-care, we worry about, oh, it has to be this or it has to be that, and I have to
right.
spend this money or that money. But we
Mm-mm.
have a free resource that is
Right.
always available to us,
Yep.
and that is so important. And as we talk about grief and perinatal bereavement today, I think that's I love that you said that, because that's something that we can really put on the table for
Yeah.
the families listening to us, that that's a resource that is incredibly healing and incredibly
Right.
free, which is
Yeah,
not
and it
common in
doesn't have
life.
to be something big. It can be going outside and putting your feet on the grass, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, it
So
can
it
be.
doesn't have to be something big. And fun fact, before I was becoming a nurse, I wanted to be a marine biologist. So
Oh, really?
yeah,
Oh, I see. So now the sharks totally make. I
now that
love
makes
that.
sense. Yeah.
Totally makes sense. I love that.
We
Oh,
also got to swim with manta rays in Hawaii one time, which was probably one of the more epic things I've ever done. Yeah, big, like 14 feet wide manta rays.
wow. Oh
Yeah,
my goodness. Oh,
yeah,
I love that adventure side of things. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I love it. Isn't it funny, because both as professionals and as human beings, a lot of times there are things in our life that define, I don't know if I want to say define us so much. I want to say it becomes a unique kind of like a lonely identity, like I'm this or I'm that, or now I'm a
Right.
bereaved parent. But we have so many dimensions to our humanity, so many things we like to do, so many facets that
Hmm.
complete this
Yeah.
diamond that we are, and
Yeah. I recently was listening to another podcast about, how when we meet new people, we're like, oh, what do you do for a living?
mhm,
And that's like the go-to question. So like stepping out of that and saying like, what do you love? What ignites you? Where do you find your joy? To
yes,
separate from that
absolutely.
because we're so wrapped up in our identities of what we do for work, especially
Yes.
helping professionals.
Oh, absolutely. In helping professions, that's it. It's you, it becomes, it's more than what you do 8 to 5 or 9 to 5. It becomes like Superman's suit, it's something that is kind of like it's part of you.
Hmm.
And then sometimes you have to remember, I love this, I love what I do, I
Yeah.
love wearing this suit, but so many other things as well.
Right. Right.
Um,
And I get to take it off. I get to take that suit off.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think, like you said, that's where the connection with other people comes when we transcend what we do or what our jobs are or what our professions are. That's where we get to connect. And obviously, we bring all that to the table too. We're not two separate things. We're always
Right.
all
Oh,
in
one
one.
whole
Oh,
human.
exactly. All one neat
I
package.
recently, I recently told my boyfriend, right, because obviously I work in the grief field. I've had a lot of personal grief myself.
Mm.
Um, I just said to him, like, to love me is to love my grief
Ooh,
because you can't love me if you don't also love my grief because there's so much of it.
wow. Yeah, that's really powerful. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And in the type of work that you do, which we're gonna get into, other than your personal experience of grief, now you also have the professional
Hmm.
experience of grief, of supporting
Right.
a lot of situations of grief that are very, multifaceted, complicated,
Hmm.
and you're the vessel holding everything
Right.
together for these families. So I can imagine. Oof,
Yeah.
but that was very wise of you to say that, because yes, the person that loves you needs to understand where you're coming from and what
Right.
your needs are,
Right.
and you have unique, beautiful, you know needs that,
Hmm.
and gorgeous they are, because not everybody wants to do this line of work, and not everybody lasts in this line of work.
Right.
um a lot of professionals are not comfortable. They will shy away from it. They will try to pass it on to somebody else. I'm sure not so much in the hospital, but in my world as a doula, I've
Oh
seen
yeah.
that a lot. When they don't know what to do, they try to pawn the family off to somebody else. And I'm like,
Hmm.
never make a family feel like they're damaged goods.
Right.
Like, I'm just going to pawn you off to somebody else. I mean, you can invite them to connect with another professional, but how you do it. But I always tell people, birth professionals, if you need help in how to work with this family, ask any of us that
Right. Right.
we're happy to tell you, but never make anybody feel like they're damaged goods. That's a
Right.
big thing for me. Like, you cannot be their doula anymore because A, B, and C. Nope, nope.
Hmm.
I'm sure in the hospital it's different, but
You'd be surprised. You'd be
yes,
surprised.
but I was gonna say, I think we're gonna bring that into the conversation as well, and I would be very interested to hear what that looks like in the hospital. Do you
Yeah.
feel that is pretty similar to
Yeah.
how
I
I described
feel
it,
in the
or no?
hospital there are people that are not comfortable with death, even though exposed to it. Or maybe they're comfortable, but they're not comfortable having the intimate, deep level conversations around
Mm.
death that need to happen. So it becomes a task oriented thing.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. So it's more about this is what needs to happen, A, B,
Yeah.
and C, and that's it. And then the human aspect of things, not so. I mean, it is still human, but it's not
Yeah.
right.
We were
The-
recently working with a family, and the one bereavement coordinator here, she went in and there were a bunch of people in the room. And she asked the bedside nurse, like, who is everybody? And she's like, I don't know. Like, the less questions, the better. She was like, no, 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 no.
oh,
This helps
oh,
us provide better care when we know who everybody is supporting them.
of course. Oh my
Right.
goodness, absolutely.
Yeah.
So she said the less questions, the better. Oh, oh,
Right.
I know, I know, I know. It's very complicated, right? Because when somebody is not trained or prepared to encounter perinatal loss and
Right.
they are in the middle of a busy shift with multiple patients, that response that she had, the less you know, the better, maybe is what was getting her through the day or what
Right.
gets her through the day, which is
Right.
a very human, um, thing to say, but at the same time, ouch. And
Hmm.
there goes the education piece. Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
no, that's not
Yeah.
how we function. This is why we do what we do.
Right.
Absolutely. So, Jill, um, so you work in a hospital in Illinois,
Hmm.
where I used to live.
Yep.
And in your hospital, you're in charge of the bereavement department, right?
Hmm. Yes.
And so you handle all of the work with families that are experiencing bereavement and organize
Hmm.
events and everything like that.
Yeah.
And we might have somebody listening, and you're going to tell us more about everything you do because it's super interesting.
Hmm.
But we might have somebody listening that has never met a person that does what you do.
Okay.
They've never met a Jill before.
Hmm.
And they're thinking, why on earth would somebody go into that line of work? Because unfortunately, there are people that think that way. There are
Oh,
people
yeah.
that try to stay as far away from death as they can. So, how did that start for you? And how did Jill decide, I'm going to work in bereavement? I'm going to take care of families going through perinatal loss?
I love sharing this story because I get to share a beautiful and sad, heartbreaking story about Caleb. So, when I was a senior in high school, one of my very best friends was a senior in college and she was pregnant. And everybody was excited, and we had had the baby shower, and she was ready to bring him home. And unfortunately, she went to the doctor because she felt like something was wrong, and they sent her over to the hospital. And by the time she had gotten to the hospital, her son Caleb had died inside. So he had a heartbeat at the doctor's office, and he died before getting to the hospital.
Oof.
So you can imagine at the time I was 17, I had no idea that babies died.
Mm.
Didn't know that this existed in our world because I had never been exposed to anything like that. And it was a very eye opening experience for me. And her nurses were incredible to her. And I learned so much through them. And I remember vividly standing at his grave thinking, this is what I have to do with my life. This is why I was put on this earth. And I'm going to become a nurse so I can be like her nurses. Still know the nurse's name. Her name was Heather. She had blonde hair. Never found her again, but I'd love to share that story with her because she changed my life along with him.
Wow. Wow,
Yeah.
that's
So at the time, right, this was in the early 90s. So in the 80s, things started shifting in the care for bereaved families after their baby died. It used to look like we are going to take your baby from you because you shouldn't see or hold your baby, and that's going to protect you. And we thankfully learned that that is not the best way to go through grief. So in the late 80s, things started changing. And he was born in 1994, and the hospital she delivered at didn't really have any supports. So they said, go over to Northwest Community Hospital. They have a program there, they have a support group, they have a memorial service. So I actually attended my first memorial service with her. And then I was like, well, I need to get a job over there. If this is what they're doing, this is what I want to do. So I got a job and then went to nursing school and graduated and got a job in labor and delivery so I could help families like hers.
Wow, that's a really amazing story, and I love that to this day the story of Caleb continues informing and nurturing and replenishing everything you do, because it's in his memory that
Right.
all these years of work have happened. And I love how you said that she had the best nurses, and that nurse
Mhm.
Heather really made an impact on you, and you would love to tell her the story, and hopefully she's
Maybe
still
she'll hear it.
around. Exactly, maybe she gets to hear the interview. But I think it's so beautiful that it speaks to the importance of how those nurses that work with the family will
Mhm.
create such an impact, and
Yeah.
they will remember their names, and they will remember the way that they were treated, just
Right.
like you remember the way your friend was
Right.
treated and nurtured and etc. um I love that. I love that so much. Uh, Sometimes, isn't it true that something that can be so absolutely devastating that other people would like to sweep under the rug and forget about it, brought you so
Mhm.
much purpose and
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Like
much.
completely transformed my life. This little
Abs-
boy. Right. And I always, like he's a big part of everything I do. But I always tell my patients too, like every family and every baby that I encounter
Mm,
teaches me something. And then I bring that to the next family I encounter. And that's how I carry their spirit on through me. And that's how I make some sort of peace with the pain that I experience when caring for the families.
right, right, because that's absolutely, that's really important too, how you are able to reconnect all the dots afterwards because of how much you're carrying on your shoulders
Yeah.
when you are caring for these families. How many years have you been doing this work, if that's okay to say?
So 27 years. So I started out as a labor and delivery nurse, and I did that for 17 years.
Hmm.
And then I moved into the perinatal palliative and bereavement coordinator role,
Hmm.
that formally for 8 years. And then now I'm the director of Well-being and Bereavement Services. So I kind of oversee a larger portion of things.
I
Um,
got you. So
COVID,
you have
COVID
a. Mhm.
changed my career a little bit.
Ah. Hmm.
Um, because I ended up supporting bereaved families in ICU and then supporting the staff also because they were seeing an amount of death nobody was used to seeing. So they
Right.
were like, we need that lady that knows about the dead things. She needs to come help us.
I love that. So, as the director of well-being and bereavement, you now have a bereavement coordinator that works under.
Yeah, yeah,
And I love that. I love
yeah.
that
So
because
it's
you
been really
can.
fun mentoring her and growing her and all of that.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
during that time, I also was working on my master's degree
Mm-hmm.
in something called thanatology.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 points to any of the viewers who know what that word means. But it is the study of dying, death, and bereavement.
Wow.
Yeah.
I I love that you studied that masters because it's an area that is so important to learn and know
Mhm.
about. And in the work that you do, of course, it's essential. Um, I knew what the word meant, but that doesn't mean much because I studied Greek in high school, and based on
Ah,
the Greek
yeah.
words, I
The
knew.
Greek word. Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, in Spain, the funeral homes are not called funeral homes, they're called sanatoriums.
Oh,
So they
really?
still,
I didn't know
yes, so
that.
they have the root,
Yeah.
the Greek root in front. So that's why, yeah, but it's wow, it's amazing. I love that you studied that, and I know you're gonna tell us more about what that looks like day to day on the daily application. In the years that you've been working with prenatal bereaved families, what is an what's a number that you feel comfortable saying this is how many,
Mm-hmm.
some people call them angel babies. In
Mm-hmm.
Spain, we call them star babies, which
Oh,
is
I love
really
that.
cool because they're with the stars.
Mm-hmm.
How many babies and how many families do you think you've touched, in these 27 years of work? It doesn't have to be an
Right? I'm
exact
like,
number.
I mean, it's got to be hundreds. It's got to be hundreds.
Oof,
And, people used to ask me, like, oh, you do that for a job? How, all the questions you would expect. How do you do that? That's so
yeah.
sad. Um, but then people would be like, they need that. And I would always say, like, there's enough for me to have a job. Right. So every year
Mm.
here in our labor and delivery, we usually have between 30 to 50 losses. Now that's, any loss on the pregnancy continuum from about 17 or 18 weeks to a newborn death.
Mhm.
Uh, but enough that we need somebody coordinating the program.
Right, absolutely. And even though the earlier losses would probably be seen in a different department of the hospital, and they would not be seen in your department, because first trimester losses are a little different.
Right. But
That
we also
means
support those areas too.
you support those areas too.
Yeah. So we
That's
may not see every one of those patients. We have about 200 to 300 miscarriages that come through other areas,
mm,
but we have education for the staff and bereavement support for the families too.
oh, that's wonderful. So you have about 200 to 300 a year.
Yeah,
Oof.
those are usually before 12 weeks.
Before 12 weeks. Right, 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 right. So you have what I like to call a nice big sample of families that you have supported.
Mm-hmm.
And what have I'm sure it's impossible to list the things, here are 5 things that I learned from families. No, that's impossible to list because I'm sure the experiences have been incredible over the
Oh,
years.
yeah. Yeah.
But how has that transformed your life as a nurse, as a bereavement director, and also as a person? What are
Yeah.
the teachings that have come through all that work and all those babies that sadly left too soon?
Forgive me if I get emotional.
No, it's okay.
Um, yeah, there's so many things I've learned about humanity and about love and about grief and about transformation and about healing. Um, and right there, it's multifaceted. So like the professional Jill, the personal Jill, the mom Jill, um, and all of these have been impacted greatly by my patients and families. Right, I always tell them they're my greatest teachers. They teach me more than I can learn in a book or in a program, but I've also been transformed through my education too. Um, so maybe I'll start with that transformation through my thanatology program, because I went into that and people were like, why aren't you getting a master's in nursing? It's way more valuable. And right, it
Mhm.
just wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to enhance the work that I was already doing, and I wanted it to be meaningful to me, or else I don't want to just do it just to get a master's in nursing. That wasn't where I wanted to go with it.
Right.
So I was expecting to learn from that thanatology program, but I wasn't expecting the personal transformation that came out of it, and just how my eyes were open to so many things, right? Like being in the perinatal bereavement space my whole career. I really pushed myself to take classes that were outside of that.
Mhm.
So, like grief in the military, suicidology, trauma, and right, like really expanding my learnings. And it just changed my life, really changed my
Wow.
life. But then, being able to bring that back to my families and serve them in a
Mhm.
better way than I saw myself serving them before. And right, I don't think I walked out of any interaction with a family not learning something or being transformed by that. Um, right, they allow me to be in these really intimate, painful spaces, and they trust a stranger to help guide them. And
Mhm.
I don't think there's anything more powerful than that. And like to be able to hold their stories, right? Their
Mhm.
stories of their children that are no longer physically here with them. And to trust me with that is the biggest honor anybody could ask for. I think one of the things, right, there's the ones you would expect about the love and the grief and the healing and the post traumatic growth. But one thing that I was surprised by with my transformation is the idea of religion and spirituality. I
Mhm.
didn't grow up raised in any sort of religion,
Gotcha.
um, but being present in so many different faiths and so many different cultures
Mhm.
and learning some of the most powerful conversations I ever had were about religious and faith traditions after a child dies,
Mhm.
right? Because I want to be able to honor these families in a way that is important to them. So, like sitting down and really diving into those conversations of what's important, what do you need, what does your faith guide you through, and how do we honor that? And
Mhm.
just learning all of the different faiths. And then me myself going like, well, like, how can I say that there's this God or this God when all of these people are sharing their gods with me?
Mhm.
And right, some of my Hindu patients probably say it best. They're like, Jill, listen, we all have these different gods, but at the end of the day, we're all praying to the same God.
Yeah.
They just have different names.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I that has to be such an incredible gift. I mean, in the midst of this very heart-wrenching situation, when these families are devastated, and how their faith is carrying them, and how respecting and honoring their culture and their beliefs is
Mhm.
helping them have a container for that grief, and they're sharing
Mhm.
that with you, uh, which is making you incredibly wealthy in wisdom, because the truth is we might know quite a bit about how our own culture deals with grief,
Mhm.
but how other cultures deal with it is
Right.
might be completely different, and it's so unique, and I love that. Is there a family, without, of course, without going into deep details, because we
Mhm.
know those are not um those do not need to be part of the conversation, but is there a family, two families I'm thinking of, is there a family, a story of a family that really, the impact of how that story unfolded really stuck with you? And on the other hand, is there a family that through this difficult time had such a, I want to say, such a positive approach to things? So
Mhm.
somebody, some story that really touched you, that it was like, in my 27 years, this story I still remember to this day. Oh my goodness. And on the other hand, wow, this family, they were dealt these terrible cards, and actually they actually made lemonade out of the lemons, to use a colloquial expression. Um, so I don't know if I'm throwing too much at you. Go ahead.
No, I
What
mean,
comes to mind when I ask that?
yeah, I have like all of these different families circling in my brain that I don't
Hmm.
know that I could pick just one because they all have an impact in different ways. But, there's a few that um, maybe have taught me more or challenged me in ways or made me think outside my
Hmm.
boxes. And then others, right? We had this family and their son died of SIDS. So I also support the pediatric emergency room. So when we have a child that dies in the ER, which is typically a traumatic death, um, watching them in their grief, if I could write a book or a guide for families and say, this is everything you should do,
Mhm.
it would be their story. Like they just followed, and it doesn't mean it was better or worse because everybody's following their journey on their timeline.
Right, right.
So there's really no judgment in that. But I would talk to the mom and I'd be like, if I could tell everybody the timeline and things to do and how to approach grief, they just
Mm.
they checked all of the boxes that I would wish for somebody to do.
Wow.
And it was just so interesting to observe because they didn't need a ton of my guidance and help because they were just like doing it,
Wow.
following their intuition.
I
And we
got you.
know
I
that
got
that's
you.
not the journey for everybody. But I
Right.
think the thing that we see more often in child loss and infant loss and baby loss is the post traumatic growth that happens within because people want to do things to honor their child
Right.
and keep their memory alive. You know, a lot of these children, families don't meet and they don't develop relationships with, so
Mm.
they're constantly legitimizing their child's life, which in a lot of ways comes back as how do we support other families? So starting a foundation or donating items or having birthday celebrations and collecting money and donating to different organizations. So there's a lot of that because they want to keep their child alive. And how do we do that? And we do that through legacy and memories.
Absolutely. That's I love that you talked about that because I think to the outside world they might think that okay, it's devastating, you lost a baby. The outside world kind of tells you to forget about it.
Oh yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Just forget about it. Just keep going, have
Just have
another
another
baby.
one.
Yeah, have another one. Because
When
they are
anybody, I say this all the time because that comment really pisses me off. Sorry for the language.
it's okay.
Um, so I've also lost my brother and my dad and my cousin. Like nobody would have come up to me after my father died and said, just go get another one. Like
Yeah.
it's the most, can I say asinine on here?
Yeah, absolutely. Go
It's
for
it's
it.
a ridiculous thing to say to somebody who's lost a child. Well, you can have another one.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't replace our children.
Exactly. Exactly. And for them to take, like you said, their legacy and think about how can I improve other families' lives? How can
Mhm.
I support other people going through this? That's so important. Um, I am curious because a lot of us that do this line of work, like I said, people act really surprised or put off by it, or like like I mentioned before, sometimes it's like, I'm just gonna point you off to somebody else,
Uh-huh.
blah blah blah. What reaction when you started doing this line of work? What kinds of things have you heard on a personal level, like from friends and family and stuff? And on the other side of that, from other medical professionals that you work with you. But let's start with the friends and family. What are the common misconceptions or comments that you hear that have no base in reality, but somehow people say them anyway?
There's so many.
Mhm. Right. We could be here all day.
We could write a book on this one, Marta.
I know, right?
Um, okay, some of the well, obviously we just talked about like, well, you can have another one.
Yes, that's yeah,
We don't
huge.
replace children. The infamous, at least, and we as
Yeah,
humans say this
yeah,
all the time, and I'm going to challenge everybody who listens to this. See how often you say at least, and see how often it's said to you back. Even in mundane things like, oh crap, it's raining today. Well, at least it's going to be sunny tomorrow. Because we just can't sit with bad emotions.
hmm hmm
So we have to divert and say, but or at least. There's no at least, and there is definitely no at least when a baby dies.
hmm
So we'll start with that. At least you didn't know him.
yeah. Oof.
If anybody has ever been pregnant, I don't care how many weeks it has been,
hmm
you know that baby. Your soul is connected with that baby forever.
Absolutely.
Um, now my brain is like all flustered right now because I get so irritated with these things. Oh, your baby's an angel with God.
Oof,
What if they don't believe in God? What if they don't believe in angels? Now, if a family calls their baby an angel, I will use that. But we can't assume
that's right. You can't. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
your baby or person, I don't care what age, is in a better place. What better place is there than with their parents? What
Yeah.
better place is there than with their loved ones? There
Yeah.
isn't.
Exactly.
And then the misconception that like grief ends. Grief doesn't end. It's a lifelong thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's forever. So those are like my top ones.
Mm-hmm. And do you find that um we're doing a good job of combating all that with education and outreach and stuff, or do you feel that we still have a long way to go?
I think both, right? Both
Mm,
of those can be
mm,
equal at the same time, right? Which is hard. But I think, these younger generations get, you know, people give the younger generations crap, but they're so much more emotionally and mentally aware
mhm,
than like my generation and older. So I think there's positive change coming with that. And we see that with the patients now who are delivering, they're in their 20s and 30s. So their parents are typically 50s, 60s.
mhm,
So you see that a lot with the generational clashes when we're teaching these families, you need to grieve. It's okay to be open about this. We can talk about this. We can honor your child. We can come to memorial services. But like those other generations were taught, no, we don't talk about this. We shove this down. We pretend it never happened. So
mhm.
even within families, that causes a huge struggle when the grandparents, not all grandparents, but some of the grandparents, because of how they were taught to cope, it's clashing with how these younger generations were taught to cope.
Right, right. And their generation was more about hiding things, not
Society.
talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's I totally understand that, and I agree with you. The younger generations are more aware about their mental and emotional health. There is a lot more um, openness when
Mm-hmm.
talking about it, um, and it's absolutely yeah, yeah. In our own experience of loss, we also experienced that. Like
Mm-hmm.
my own parents were concerned about my well-being, but
Right.
that was their major thing. And then on my in-laws side, we have a retired NICU nurse on that side,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so it was like it's okay, it happens, kind of thing,
Right.
so it is hard with the older generations, exactly like you're saying. What um something that
Sorry, can I pause 1 second?
absolutely.
Because I don't want to invalidate the grandparents' experience because the
Sure.
grandparents' experience, this, I don't know why, but this gets me every time.
Mm,
But um, one, they've lost a grandchild,
yeah,
and then two, they have to watch their child go through the worst imaginable pain of their life,
yeah,
which is horrific from a grandparent perspective. So
yeah.
I just didn't want to make those other comments invalidate that experience because
i
it's so hard for them.
I love that you said that, because for them is now a double grief
Yeah,
that they're going through, and all of us that our parents are still alive, they don't,
yeah,
the one thing they want more than anything in life is to see us happy and to see us
yeah.
well.
And they can't
And
fix the pain. So
exactly.
it's a really challenging piece of grief.
Yes. What a lesson, right? Because
Yeah,
we're so used to fixing everything in life. Something is broken, we fix it. Something is There's no fixing grief.
there isn't. There isn't. And right, like none of us are going to um escape death. We're not, nobody's protected from it. We're all going to see it at some point.
Not even babies, absolutely.
No.
What do you think? We're gonna definitely discuss more about your work and the
Hmm.
things, the programs the hospital has in place, because I think that's pretty um, incredible for our listeners to hear everything that you guys are doing and doing wonderfully. But what do you think about already exposing families? This is something I think about a lot. When somebody's going through pregnancy and they're going through childbirth education classes,
Hmm.
and we act like everything is perfect in the pregnancy world. I mean,
Hmm.
with a lot of air quotes, nothing is perfect, but we act like everything is perfect. And since you're pregnant, you can expect to have that baby in your arms at 9 months, which is a rude awakening when that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Do you feel that we should expose families in pregnancy to the possibility, at least to the notion that sometimes everything doesn't go according to plan? Or do you think we're breaking their precious bubble of innocence that they have when they have never gone
Yeah.
through loss?
That is a great question that nobody has ever asked me.
Good.
It's interesting because I'm like, ooh, I'm feeling this in my body. Like I'm feeling like it bubbling up inside my chest. Um,
Good.
I would probably lean towards no.
Okay. Why?
Now, with that said,
Hmm.
well, I think we need to do better at educating people and teaching people that this is a reality for so many through other people, like through other people's
Hmm.
experiences. I just can't picture how in a childbirth education class you come in and say, obviously you would say it differently, but like, sorry, your baby could die.
Right, right. No, right. We
Obviously,
would,
you're not going to say it like that,
right.
but we as human beings do live in this bubble of innocence. And as soon as you have a loss, that bubble is burst and it will never, ever be rebuilt.
Oh,
So, right, like, how do we do better at supporting those people through that? Right. Because then those parents, right, like they see other parents that are in that bubble of innocence and in the back of their mind, they're like, yep, I was there too.
yeah.
And my baby died.
Good luck with that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's nice to live in that innocence.
Right.
I I I agree with you. I think it's something that needs to happen at the society level, and
Yeah.
understanding that death goes hand in hand with life,
Hmm.
including in babies,
Right.
but
And unfortunately, mothers.
and mothers as well, absolutely.
Yeah.
But also, yes, I do agree with you that it's tough to bring that into the equation when,
Yeah.
of course, because we also have a body and a mind and an emotional state that
Hmm.
is very delicate in pregnancy, in the sense that there are all sorts of different things happening to that body and that mind that
Right.
normally don't happen. But I asked you because I never forgot a coworker of mine who had gone through two losses, and she said her doctor wanted her to come and help with the childbirth education classes or something. And she was like, "You don't want me there."
No.
And he was like, "Why not?" And he's like, she was like, "Because I'm not going to give them the sugar coated version of things. I'm
Right.
going to go to page 57. This can happen." You know,
Yeah.
I I think exactly like you said, those of us that have experienced loss, of have been close to loss, we do the job of exposing the people in our circle
Right.
about what can
Right.
happen. But at the same time, having that right amount of sharing and that right amount of um, sensitivity
Yeah.
with the new families that are still in that precious little bubble. Um,
There's so much stigma still around it, right? Like, look at how we treat early pregnancy. What do they tell you? Don't tell anyone till 12 weeks,
mhm.
right? as
Mm.
if like something magical happens at 12 weeks and you're not at risk for anything.
Yeah.
But like we're supposed to keep it a secret. But then my thought is I don't agree with that at all, because then when something does happen, you have to keep that a secret. And we all know that grief being kept a secret is not helpful to anybody. So then these families are left to just deal with this on their own
Yeah.
unless they feel like they can break that stigma and share with somebody in a vulnerable space.
Yeah.
So I don't like that, like we can't celebrate before 12 weeks,
12
because
weeks.
even if that baby lives for 12 weeks, you have those 12 weeks, right? People are finding out their genders at 13 weeks.
Yeah.
They're, picking names way sooner. And right, there's so much more bonding that is happening early on,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we're not supposed to tell anybody because it's not safe yet.
Yeah. And you will see people in your I see people in my circle waiting quite a while to announce. And each circumstance is different. They might have had uh, some risk along the way that makes them
Right.
weary of sharing. So, of course, personal choice, but I absolutely agree with you. Why not celebrate every week with that baby, regardless of
Right.
how long that is?
And then don't you want your intimate circle around you if something happens, right? To carry you through?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because silence, because it makes other people uncomfortable to talk about it. Too bad, so sad,
Yep.
you know.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's uncomfortable, but it's there. Do you find that in the work that you do that is sad and devastating and intense and everything, do you still find joy and opportunities for smiles and all that in your work? And do you think that surprises people? Because I've heard that comment before. You talk about your story with joy, you put joy into a sad subject, and I think people kind of don't compute. They're
Yeah.
like, if it's
Yeah.
death, it should all be sad.
Yeah. And it's not, right? Like, one, I think this is just my personal belief that one of the biggest tasks of grief is
Hmm.
learning how to carry the grief and the joy together, right? Because society says, no, you can't be grieving and happy, or grieving and joyful, or grieving and grateful. You have to be one or the other because they're two
Hmm.
contrasting emotions. Um, so that I think that is on people's journey, one of the biggest tasks we have to learn how to do both of those together, which is difficult sometimes. But the first thing I'd like to say is, right, humor is a beautiful coping skill. So there are some people who are not educated who walk into rooms and come out and they're laughing like their baby has died and they're laughing in their room. Well, the human body and mind cannot possibly 24/7 every minute of the day sit in grief. You need a release. You need other coping tools. Your brain needs a break. So, how do we do that? With humor, and oftentimes really inappropriate dark humor if you've known somebody that grieves.
Mm, yes.
um, but I remember a NICU family, and their baby was dying. And right, part of legitimizing a baby's life is bringing a family in and letting them meet the baby, letting them develop relationships.
Mm.
And with that, there is joy, even though this child is dying. And the nurses were really uncomfortable with the amount of expression that was in the room, and the joy in the room, and the laughter in the room. But they were socializing their baby, even though they knew he was going to die. So it
Hmm.
took a lot of education. Like, there's nothing wrong with this. It is okay to be grieving and happy and joyful at the same time. Those two things can coexist together, because they couldn't sit in that room every minute of the day for a week and be sorrowful. The
Yeah.
other thing, right? We do bereavement photography,
Hmm.
and oftentimes we will have pictures of parents holding their baby and smiling, because even though their child has died, they're just full of pride. Like, this is my beautiful child that we created, and we are getting to spend time with him or her, and we are full of pride. and that comes out in a smile. Or we have siblings, right? Like siblings amaze me all the time because they walk into these spaces, and most of the time they're young children, and they just come on without any of these walls and shields that us adults have.
Mm-hmm.
And they just see this beautiful baby as their little sister or little brother, and they're beaming with smiles, and they're so excited and just want to be a part of the experience, and that it's seen in the photographs. And I've
Wow.
also had parents come back to me saying, I wish I had a picture of me smiling with my baby.
Oh,
Yeah. Because, right, we don't cue people, but most of the time it comes out, but it doesn't always come out.
right. That makes sense. Do you have a system in place? I know there are families sometimes that at the time they will not want pictures, and then later down the road they're like, I wish I had pictures taken. Do you take pictures and save them for a little bit in case they want to come and pick them up, or how does that work?
So unfortunately, we can only do that if they sign a consent, because
Oh,
there's been
that
some
makes sense.
lawsuits about pictures being taken without consent from the families.
Right.
So we do everything possible to convince them, right? Like we've learned from other families that this is helpful. We know right now it feels right when you don't know that babies die. You come in and your baby dies, and we're like, by the way, we should take pictures. They
Yeah.
think we're probably crazy, right? Like I would
Yeah.
think somebody was crazy, but explaining that other families find this helpful. And even if it doesn't feel like this is something we want to do right now, this isn't something we can go back on,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So we can hold the pictures here. We can put them on a disc. You can give them to your family. You never, ever, ever have to look at them. But if you change your mind, they're there.
Yeah.
Or if you want to tell this story to your baby's big brother or sister someday,
Mm-hmm.
right? Oftentimes people want to shield their children, the siblings, um, but it's a disservice. I'm not saying that in a judgmental way.
No, I
Everybody has
get
to
it.
do what feels right to them,
Yeah.
but the siblings deserve to be a part of the story too.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree 100%. And that baby deserves their place in the family line,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
same as all the other siblings. Um, and children hear so much and understand so much just because we hide it from them. Yeah, it's a
Way more than we think.
yeah, it's a total disservice. Um, and for people to know also that even if they walked out of the hospital not having had their pictures taken, of course, the opportunity to have them with the baby is gone. But there are photographers out there that will do a memorial
Mm-hmm.
photography where they can use items that they bought for the
Right.
baby. So there are always options
Mm-hmm.
um, to honor their baby. But I've seen infinite amounts of pictures from the hospital, and they are precious. They
Yeah.
are precious. Which I
I
think
think it's
photography.
important. Go
Mhm, go
ahead.
ahead.
You go. You go
No, no,
first.
I was gonna say that photography, bereavement photography, is something else that surprises people. That they're
Oh
like,
yeah.
"What? There is
Yeah.
photography for that?"
Right. It's beautiful, and it captures so much of the love in the room
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
for sure.
You were gonna say something
Oh,
else
I was
about
gonna
families.
say, just to bounce off of what you said, like there's always ways to do some photography, even if you chose in the hospital. And I think that a lot of families, like if they come with regret, like I didn't take pictures, or I didn't get the mementos, or I didn't name my baby. You can name your baby at any time. You can name your
Mhm.
baby 12 years later, right?
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
giving people that permission,
Yes, yes,
because it's
because
so hard to make those decisions in that moment. It's so hard. Your brain is just traumatized in that moment. And how do
mm,
you make the best decisions?
yeah, yeah, and everybody's throwing the logical aspect
Uh-huh.
of the brain at you, but you're not in the logical
You
brain.
can't
You're
process it. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. What I love that because it's good for families to know and understand that we have a lot of good systems in place and
Hmm.
a lot of good, you know, programs and activities and options in place for them, that they don't have to navigate this alone, that there
Right.
is a lot of support out there. I love that, and sometimes they might not know where to find it, but
Mhm.
in the context of the hospital, such as the one where you work, I know you guys have an amazing variety of activities that you have
Mhm.
for the perinatal bereavement community, for parents that have gone through loss. So tell us a little bit about what you guys do for that.
Okay. I like talking about this because it's, a point of pride because I think we do this very well.
Mhm.
And our hospital has been committed to this for nearly 30 years. We have some parents that have come to our memorial services every year for 30 years. Um,
Wow.
so I think that's a testament to this hospital and the commitment to these families. Um, and I think if anybody is a provider in this, listening to this, all you have to do is start small. It doesn't have to start as something big, right? Like we started small and then kept growing. But currently, um, like we've mentioned, there's a bereavement coordinator,
Mhm.
whether that's myself or Catherine, that guides these families from the time they step into the door until long after discharge. Follow up calls, and that support after discharge is essential if they want it. All of our staff goes through mandatory 8-hour education on how to care for these families, right? Because this is not something that is taught in nursing school, not taught in medical school.
Right.
So there's mandatory education for all of our staff who would be caring for these families. Obviously, we do a lot of the mementos, the footprints, the molds. We have bracelets for families that are made by my mom. Um, so
Oh.
as many mementos as possible and really just trying to personalize them as much as possible. Canvases with footprint or handprint art. I worked with
Mhm.
this little boy once and he loved dinosaurs. And we made two little dinosaurs out of the baby's feet for him. So like one
Oh,
had his name and one had the baby's name. So that could be his to take home.
I love that.
Locks of hair, right? Like enough, as many mementos and pictures that we can give to them because this is their only physical time of parenting their child, and
Mm.
these are the things that they're going to be left with, to hold on to. So trying to create as much and giving them as much opportunity to be parents physically to them. So reading books and participating in a bath and dressing their baby and changing their baby's diaper, all of those
Mhm.
tasks that
Mm.
we don't think of when how lucky we are to do those. This
Right.
one family I had, the mom had also experienced a stillbirth, and now her daughter was, but the mom didn't get any of these experiences. So she came and gave her grandson his first bath. And that
Oh, wow.
healed a piece of her because she wasn't able to do that for her son. So just
Wow.
really, knowing the family story and knowing what's important and creating our mementos, to be that very personalized thing. After discharge, we have, like I said, our follow up cards and then follow up phone calls. And it's really just continuing to build that relationship and that trust to guide them through their journey.
Mhm.
We have two support groups, a pregnancy and infant loss support group, and then we have a pregnancy after loss support group. And that is for people who are going through another pregnancy.
Mhm. Mhm.
And as you would imagine, they're riddled with anxiety because their innocence bubble is gone and they know what can happen. So they need a lot of support through that. Also, for society, grief does not go away when you get pregnant again. It often intensifies. Everybody thinks, like, oh, you're pregnant again. We can stop talking about all that death stuff and sadness and we can be happy. But that's not the experience for these families.
Mhm.
And then we have two memorial services a year. We have a walk to remember in October, and we have a butterfly release in the early part of June in between Mother's Day and Father's Day, because those are typically hard days.
Mhm.
And what's nice about all of those things after the hospital is you don't have to deliver here to have access to them.
Mhm.
They are all free, and anybody in our community can attend.
Oh, that's really, yeah. That's really wonderful that they're open to the whole community.
Yeah, it's
Because in
really a
some
community focused
exactly,
program.
exactly. Some places will limit it to only the people that deliver
Right.
at the hospital, which right. But I love that you are offering them to the community and that you have a wide variety of services that you're providing the families
Yeah.
and different ways to memorialize life with their baby. Um, do, I know you mentioned bathing the baby, changing the diapers, and all that. Are the families surprised when you invite them to do that? Are they? I know on the outside, people people that have not gone through the experience of losing their baby, they
Hmm.
might be kind of surprised, like, why do you need to bathe the baby? Why do you need to change the diaper? So, do you find that families come from that mindset because of what they've heard around them, or not really? They are pretty open to it because it's part of their healing process.
Yeah, I think it's a wide spectrum, but
Mm-hmm.
I think any family or most families, they would recount, right? Like one of us coming into the room and explaining the options.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably like a mind altering experience, right? Like
Right.
you want me to bathe my dead baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
you want me to take pictures, you want me to it's got to just be mind altering.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is in the presentation, right? Like giving them a little bit of information at a time and not dumping everything. Their brain can't process at that point, but really just talking and telling them we've learned this from other parents because they've shared with us how it's transformed their grief. And we know this because other parents have found this helpful. So, really, like normalizing it
Mm-hmm.
and acknowledging, like, yeah, this sounds strange, but this is very normal in our world.
Mm-hmm.
And then continuing the conversation as you're building trust. Now, sometimes there's not time. And right, like I've gone into rooms and said, like, I know this is going to be crazy, but I need you to trust me. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to steer you wrong and I'm going to be here with you to guide you. I just need you to trust me that this is the right way to go for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not for everybody, right? It's not for everybody. Culture impacts this, faith impacts this, past
Mm-hmm.
trauma impacts this. Um, but with time and trust and encouragement and normalization, it starts to feel less scary. And right, like
Mm-hmm.
we teach our nurses, like they're modeling. So when they hold that baby with love and care, just like you would hold any other baby, you're modeling to the parents, oh, it's okay. Like we can do this. We can hold our baby and it can feel normal. And right,
Yes.
like doing the bath, you're usually with another nurse. So the
Mm-hmm.
nurse is guiding and showing, and right, like this can be a normal experience.
Mm-hmm.
Rocking your baby, reading your baby a book, right? All of these things are parenting tasks that you have the honor to do for your child.
Absolutely. And that you're trying to concentrate an entire lifetime into a few hours
Yeah.
or a day.
Yeah.
If there is a cooling cot in the room, perhaps a
Right.
day, 2 days, but
Right.
um you're trying to concentrate all these tasks and create these memories that you're not gonna
Hmm.
get to do over and over and
Right.
over.
Right.
Um, I I love I know I love everything that you have described, and I know, um, like you said, I really love that you said that it's all in the modeling, it's all in how we handle the
Hmm.
baby, how we care for the baby, that the parents now have a role model, have an example
Right.
of, we're not looking at death like something to be afraid of, but we're looking at it with reverence of
Hmm.
this baby is a precious child. Now they are deceased, but they're still a precious child and they're precious
Yeah.
to their family. And that's really, really important. And I think something else that we get to share with the society at large, and get to bring that education into the community, that's
Yeah.
that's a beautiful thing, because when they're looking at their baby, they're not seeing death, they're seeing life.
No. Yeah.
They're seeing life. They're seeing exactly what you said, a beautiful baby that they created together.
Hmm.
And I always remember that when I did my bereavement training, they taught us that we celebrated life and we honor death at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah.
So with a family that has just lost their baby, that's we're doing both, right? Um, and that's what a privilege to be there in the midst of something that is so devastating, but still um, such a blessing. How is the what's the connection with the families after they leave the hospital? I know you said you have things in place for them
Mhm.
to, phone calls and follow up and etc. But in addition to that, what's your experience of the families? Do they come back and visit you again? Do most of the families like call or contact or come around, or do you feel that it's good that you have the basis for connection, but sometimes they kind of wanna
Yeah.
stay away, perhaps?
Yeah. And there's again that spectrum of those that like want to dive in and get all the follow-up calls and jump into the support groups and come to the events and do everything possible. And then there's others that maybe are less hesitant and want to, maybe they feel like it's more personal for them to do on their own journey and maybe just check in every once in a while. And then some who we don't hear from again. And, we hope they do okay. And on the anniversary, we send them an anniversary card so they always know that they have us as a resource.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really embracing each individual's journey. That was hard for me at first because it was like, oh, we have all this good stuff and I know it can help you, but that doesn't mean it's the right thing for them. And
Right.
then we have people that maybe at year 2 or 3 are like, all right, I'm ready for this. I want to come in and join this circle of support. So it's really, really individualized, and we just try to support them no matter what they choose for their journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love that because, like you said, we have all this beautiful support, we have all these things in place, but at the end of the day, you have to look at the family and go, maybe this is not what they need right now.
Right.
Maybe they need something different.
Mhm.
Maybe they will come when they're ready. Um, or perhaps they're just um, following a different process
Right.
for their
And that's okay
grief,
too.
and that's okay too.
I had a family once. It was pretty soon into my career as the coordinator,
Mm-hmm.
and she really didn't want a lot of follow up. And I was like, like I would think that she would be one that would participate in the follow up, but very like, I just want to get my stuff. I want to go. I don't really want to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, oh, am I doing something wrong? Did I not do it the right way? Do I, like self reflection of like, did I screw this up? And then like a year later, she reached out. She's like, can we meet and talk? I was like, oh, she's going to tell me that I screwed this up, right? But I can take it. Like I can take it and I can be better. I'm ready for this. And so we met here at the hospital and she's like, I want to start a foundation and help people pay their bills. And I was like, and then she told me about her blog that she did on her own and like all of this grief work she was doing on her own. And it just like, again,
Wow.
teaching me so much. Just because people aren't accessing her stuff doesn't mean they're not doing the work, and it just looks different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. Wow, that story.
Yeah.
You're like, because initial human reaction might be, oh, she didn't want it. She's like,
Right.
no,
I
thank
didn't
you.
connect with her, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe she just wants to hide all of this. But no, she
Yeah,
was just doing the work differently.
but she was just doing it,
Yeah.
and she came back when she needed to come back, when it
Right.
flowed naturally for her.
Yeah. I
That's
have
really
another
awesome.
family too. They did their grief very different from what I would have expected with their daughter Saoirse. And I mean, I don't think I've ever learned so much in my life from a grieving family, and really just stepping back and accompanying them on their journey without judgment. Like that was my biggest teacher moment of a family. And this year she released her own book, right? Years ago, she reached out and she's like, listen, I want to write a book and a guided journal for families. And I was like, seriously? Like, okay, let's do this. And right, she had a lot of resources to help her. And I got to be one of those resources for her book. And she just released it just a few months ago. It's called The First After. And it's like a guided journal through that first year of grief for moms.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really that's really wonderful.
Yeah.
That's really wonderful to put their grief to use it to benefit other families that are
Mm-hmm.
going through the same thing so they don't have to be so alone.
Yeah.
Now, I love that experience. In wrapping up our
Yeah.
episode, and this conversation is amazing, and I think best proof that there is joy in death is that you and I have been smiling through the entire
Yeah.
interview, because
Yeah.
I know we both love doing this line of work, even if it's extremely difficult and extremely, it's a heart-wrenching experience, but we
Mm-hmm.
know that we need to be there for families, because the other option is nobody's there for them, and that's
Right.
not good. That's not an acceptable option. But for our listeners that have never gone, because I know part of the audience perhaps has never gone through loss,
Mm-hmm.
um let's put them into the shoes of a family that has just dealt with the news of their baby not being alive, and they've been in the hospital, they've been provided with all the beautiful memento creation that you guys have, support groups, they've been, pretty much they've been supported and held, and now they're walking into this big bad world where people don't know how to act around them,
Yeah.
because they're going home with empty arms. And walk us a little bit through what is that experience like for parents, and what can we do as community members, whether professional or personal
Yeah.
capacity, to support them, because now they're walking into this harsh winter like
Mhm.
environment. Chicago in the winter
Right.
snowstorm, which we both know well,
Yeah.
type thing.
It's the perfect analogy because in the hospital, they're protected. They're with people who know, people who understand, people who have been educated, and they're in a bubble, right? And then they go back out into society. And in an ideal world, they're met with all supportive people, but we know that that's not usually the case for
Mm-hmm.
everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So they come out, and as much as we try to prepare them, there are things that we can't prepare them for. And right, that's the first time somebody's not supportive. That's when somebody has to return to work and nobody acknowledges their baby or their experience. Or, they walk into their Starbucks that they go to every day and somebody says, oh, did you have your baby?
Mm-hmm.
What do you say?
Yeah.
Right. So, or, people say those dumb things that I talked about. I will say, when people say dumb things, it's usually not intentional. They're coming from a good
True.
place. They just don't know what to say. So then some really stupid things come out of their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so how can we better serve these families? And I think the biggest piece of advice is to learn from them by becoming a witness,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you become a witness to their grief and you don't want to fix it and you don't want to placate it, you learn how to be a supportive human, right? The proverbial, let me know what you need. It's well intentioned, but do you think their brain can access what they need? They need their baby. You
Yeah.
can't give them what they need. So thinking, right? Like, how can I physically help, right? Can I mow their lawn? Can I drop off groceries without any expectation of even seeing them? Can I leave a meal? Can I help with laundry? Right? All of those mundane tasks are insurmountable when you come home after your child dies. Cooking, cleaning, showering, all of that. So how can you help them without expectations that anything's coming back? Um, and I think really having a person to support you if you're supporting them, because it's hard. It's hard to live in somebody's grief. So having somebody outside
Mm.
that you can also get support from. And really, I think the most important thing we can do is listen to their story, let them tell their story as many times as possible, and then legitimize their child's life, right? Buy something in memory of them. Tell them they're never going to forget their baby. Use their baby's name.
Mm.
Remember them on anniversaries. Remember them on Christmas. Remember them on Mother's Day. Remember them on Hanukkah, Father's Day, Valentine's Day, Halloween. Every year for the rest of their life, they're going to be wondering what their child would have been for Halloween.
Oh yeah.
Back
Yeah.
to school.
Back
How
to
many
school.
back to school posts did you just see?
Oof. A ton of
So
them.
many. When that baby was supposed to be 5, they're going to be thinking about my kid would have been going to kindergarten, but
Kindergarten. Yeah.
unfortunately, she died.
Yeah. Yeah.
So acknowledgement is huge,
Absolutely.
huge.
Absolutely. I think these um, tips that you have just shared are so meaningful, and all of them are easy to do.
Mhm.
Um, and I think the biggest one, and you have mentioned it uh, over our conversation, is that sometimes in the desire to fill the silence, we fill the silence with a lot of things that hurt more
Yeah.
than they heal. And it's absolutely okay to be quiet. So
Yes.
to
Silence
say
is so powerful, so powerful. But at the end of the
absolutely.
day, if you're denying their grief, you're denying their child.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So the tiptoeing around the family, the pretending the baby never existed.
Mhm.
I didn't want to say the baby's name because I didn't want to make you hurt more.
They hurt
It's
every minute of every day.
exactly,
You're not bringing up
exactly,
more.
exactly. And to any parent in the world, what's better than hearing their child's name?
Yeah.
I mean, what's better than hearing that name that is so special and so full of love for you? And love, we always say that love doesn't end and also is not defined by the weeks a baby is
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah.
It's not, it's forever. Um, so that's really incredible. I love that. I think where we lose people sometimes is that they're a little bit lost. They mean well, like you said, they don't know what to say. They're afraid to say the wrong thing, so perhaps don't say anything.
Right.
But what you just shared is a very good starting point for people to go,
Hmm.
oh, it's okay, it's okay. I'm a little bit scared, I'm a little bit worried, I don't know what to say, I don't like to talk about death, but here are three, four,
Yeah.
five different ways that I can help my friends, my family
Right.
members that have gone through it, and help them talk about it when they feel the time is right, because
Right.
hiding it doesn't do anything. Hiding it
No.
shames it more.
Yep.
Definitely. Where can people find out more about you, and also about all the initiatives your hospital does? What's the best way to find out more
Right.
and connect with you? Yes.
So I'm on LinkedIn, and that's
Oh,
where a
perfect.
lot of my professional stuff is at under Jill Kottmeier.
Okay.
Our hospital is technically now merged, and it's Endeavor Health,
Okay.
Deavor Health, and then Northwest Community Hospital. And there'll be a
Okay.
lot of information on our perinatal palliative and bereavement program there.
Okay, so I will include those links in the show notes when the
Perfect.
episode is released so people can definitely go to those links and find out more. And if they have any questions, they can let us know as well.
Yeah.
Would you like to share with us a sentence or a sentiment, something that to you summarizes all the work that you do, everything that we've talked about today, kind of like dun dun dun. That's. this is
Yeah.
what I want people to live with today.
Well, I think some of them I already used, right? Nobody's escaping this.
Mhm.
And to step out of the fixing and judgment mentality and becoming a witness,
Mhm.
because the power of presence and connection can be so healing for so many. And right, when we invalidate people's story, whether it's grief, whether it's trauma or some other pain, it causes that shame that you talked about, and it causes more pain. And right when we want it, if anybody wants to begin healing, part of that is sharing their story in the way that they want. So honoring that by being a witness with your presence is so powerful.
Absolutely. I think that's a precious advice to wrap up our conversation for
Yeah.
today. And
Thank you so much.
no, thank you, Jill. It's been wonderful. I love to bring more and more awareness of bereavement to the listening community because
Mhm.
we can do so much when we understand it better. We can then start changing lives a little bit at a time and definitely change those around us and our interactions, which is
Absolutely.
so important. But thank you for the work you do, and I'm so glad the algorithm brought us together
I
on
know, me too.
Instagram.
Me too. Very grateful. And thank you for
Absolutely.
letting me share my story here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for being super open and just taking us for a real good journey into everything you do and why you do it and why you're passionate about this work. 27 years, you're
I
definitely
know.
passionate about it.
Yeah, definitely. It's in my soul.
That's what it is. Okay, well, it's been wonderful. Hopefully
Thank
we
you
can
so
do this
much.
again.
I would
Thank
love
you.
to. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hey, you have listened to the Wise Doula podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember, everything we discussed today was meant for entertainment and educational purposes only. It does not substitute the advice of your medical provider. Would you do us a favor? Follow me on Instagram at LovingBellyDoula. Also, let me know what other topics you would like to see me discuss in this podcast. And please subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platforms. Thank you so much. I will see you next week.